Hey there, it's Doodly Squatch, and it's time for some doodles and some stories. I don't know. Anyway, here we go. So, to describe my earliest memories, I would have to first describe the first time I ever fainted. Uh, I was together with an art group. We were working on some clay, and I was cutting some clay off of an armature that I'd used previously. I'd done like a sculpture of my own head that had probably sat around for the better part of, I don't know, a couple of years, not since college, and I had dreams of casting it and making it into whatever. I don't know. But that never happened, and it was just a big old hunk of plasticine clay, just not being used. So I wanted to break it up and get it out so we could try and make some stuff out of it. A rather large hunk of it was stuck on a plate after I had set it down, so I got the brilliant idea to try and cut that off with a very large kitchen knife. And it did. It took the clay right off. Happy days. But it also made the kitchen knife sink deep into my right thumb, fast enough to where it wasn't like stuck, but it stabbed me good. And I did the thing we all do when we get hurt. I held my hand shut and wouldn't look at it, and quickly put it under some water and hoped for the best. And when I turned the water on and it was rushing over my hand, it turned all the water like red, like blood. Probably the most I've seen myself bleed to that point. Um, it was interesting because I've never been a guy who's shies away from blood. I've seen lots of people bleed, but apparently I'm pretty selfish with my own blood. So seeing myself bleed that bad, it was pretty taxing. And I sat down at the table. I was holding my hand over my head because I know when you're bleeding, you want to keep the wound above your heart so it's not going to bleed too freely. And people are getting bandages and they're going to help me out. And I remember telling my kids to don't come in the kitchen, stay right there. And I guess I announced to the room I'm going to faint, and then I fainted, and I slumped over in my chair, and my wife and my brother were struggling to keep me from falling over. And all this is taking place while I'm no longer there. I'm not in the picture. And the feeling and the sensation during that time was so interesting because I don't remember fainting. So I don't remember getting to that place, but I remember being there and everything's quiet. And it's like I didn't have a body. I could hear, I couldn't see, and there was a sort of steady rising sound building, and it was unbearable. And I didn't have hands to put over my ears to make it stop. I didn't have eyes to close. I couldn't see, and the noise just built and built and built, and then finally it burst through, and that's when I opened my eyes, and there I am. And I had everyone, my glasses are off. I can't see. People are like, hey, you fainted. And it's like, what? And it was crazy. At that point I'd never experienced what like oblivion felt like. Like, to be nothing, to be surrounded by nothing, and then to have something intrude on that nothing. And for me, that's a lot what my earliest memories feel like. Like, for instance, one memory I always recall is I was at a beach. Obviously I know more about this in the aftermath, because I've described this to my parents before and seen pictures and things like that. So, obviously my recollection of those memories now has a lot of attachments, a lot of memories attached to it. So, but I remember being at a beach and playing with sand, building some kind of something. I remember looking off into the distance and seeing people. It looked like people were standing in the clouds, and they were very far away and they were very small. And in retrospect, I imagined those people were surfing and standing on top of the break. It looks like clouds, and to my little mind, that's where I was thinking. And there was a man there with me, and he was speaking to me, and he had kind of a scratchy voice, or he just had a deeper voice, and it's funny because looking back at pictures, that man was my father. It was my dad. He was in sunglasses, and he was playing with me, and my mom was somewhere, and I knew who mom was. I think any child, they recognize mom first, but it's such an interesting thought to think about. That was my dad, but I hadn't made that connection, at least at that point, in time. But trying to think back beyond those memories, trying to think earlier than that, my brain tends to go to that quiet place, that sort of nothing, and in between my memories, from that point at the beach to, say, remembering being in the front yard of what would be my grandparents' house, and seeing a toy in the neighboring yard, wanting to play with it, and my mom explaining to me, that's not ours, we can't play with that. And it's funny because I find myself saying that to my children when they were small, in that same sort of understanding tone. But the spaces between those memories is kind of that. It's like falling asleep and waking up again, kind of bobbing to the surface of consciousness. And when my friends and I talk about little kids, like my kids, when we often use the term, it's like, oh, has he started recording yet? Like, is his recorder on? Is he going to remember this? Or are they going to remember these things? And so in sort of chatting with my own children, asking them, what are your earliest memories? What do you remember? And it's kind of interesting to see what stands out. One of my kids, he has fairly early memories, and I can understand that, whereas I talk to other people who they can't remember kindergarten, which is insane to me. I think back to, I can remember my teacher's name, several kids in my class, a lot of what the days were like, times I got in trouble, that sort of thing. But there are people I know that they just have just huge gaps in their memories, especially around their childhood. And I don't know if that's related to trauma, whatever. But it's, to me, it's always been fascinating. And so the idea of that sort of nowhere place where I didn't have a body, and it's like I was there in a different, in a non-physical sort of state, kind of feels like what I imagine death is like. Which is, grim, I know. But I'd say in that way, it relates a lot to my art. A lot of my art has to do with, sort of dark and gritty things, and, stuff that, people are afraid of, or that I'm afraid of, shoot. So, for instance, in this drawing I'm working on, it's, I've got this skull, I've got all this stuff coming in and out of it, and, it's colorful, it's interesting composition wise, but as far as subject matter, it's up to a lot of different interpretations. And I think the sort of Stoic motto, memento mori, remember that you will die, comes up a lot in my mind, and in my art even. It's always been something I've looked at and thought of. But yeah, it's always fascinating to have these kinds of conversations, and that's another reason why I wanted to get into recording and doing YouTube and things like that, is to sort of express that and to be able to, reach out, see what other people think. I'm fascinated. What do you guys think? Have you experienced this sort of thing? I had never fainted in my life. I had no idea what that was like until I was, in my 30s. So it's, to me, it's interesting, and, I don't know if it's a shared experience, if it's unique to myself, that sort of thing. But yeah, let me know in the comments. And, if this is something we can discuss more, or, want to hear more of my thoughts about, I can make more videos and sort of find a direction. I'm still trying to figure out what's my thing, what's my groove, when it comes to this stuff. But yeah, here I am finishing up another white outline, my favorite. This is when the fat lady's singing, that sort of thing. Yeah. Anywho, hey, thanks for listening. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Tick those boxes, and I'll be back with more. Thanks for listening.